Leon spinning the third. How are you, brother?
I'm doing well. How are you, Leonard?
Great. Hey, you survived Echeconnie round three. We got our first taste of the amateur classes coming in and doing battle.
Yeah, absolutely. It was very interesting having technically 3 full days of nonstop quads on a track.
Really? Little,
hmm
little, was it a little different for you? Little shake up?
it felt normal for once. It's Daytona is just a total crapshoot. It's there's a lot going on, but at the same time, quads only hit that track 4 times. And then at Deckers, there were a couple other quad classes, but it wasn't pretty much everybody from 4 years old to 50 plus,
Right.
so it was good to finally have a normal round in the books.
What was it like for you? I mean, I know that
Mhm.
this is a race report for Echeconnie in round three, but you stepped up into the pro class. You're no
Mhm.
longer racing. How was it for you to just do what you do on Saturday?
Mhm. It was way different, obviously. You know, it's weird on Friday not going down to the track really. I wasn't riding, so I didn't go down into staging. I wasn't going somewhere and watching JJ and checking out bike setup and how he's doing. You know, JJ I think he was probably the most bummed out because he told me, I think 100 times that he wishes he was riding on Friday. But it was very weird. Luckily for me, I could, there was a couple things I needed to do to get ready for Saturday. And then it was kind of talking to some of the other people that are involved with the pro class. And then for myself, I could actually go around and talk to a few amateur riders that I wanted to speak to and get a different look at the track at the same time.
I mean, some of that's good, but
hmm
did you notice a difference between being out on the track and being able to talk to JJ about it and compare some notes while you got to ride? Like last year, you guys
hmm
were in sync where you could ride the track and talk about different portions of it.
Oh yeah, 100%. Because there's always sections of the track. Echeconnie there's a whole segment of the track that you don't really get to see because the spectating areas don't go that far. Where in the past, when I'm on the track, even if it's just for Friday practice that I'm on the track, I can see those areas and I can see those lines and all the bumps that are going to form in there. Different ways the track will degrade, where when I'm not on the track, I don't see that stuff. And that part kind of sucked because, I there's spots where he would just disappear, and to me, well, what's going on back there? What does the track look like over there? You don't know.
Right, right.
hmm
That makes it tough. It really
Yeah.
does, because
Yeah.
it's changed your guys' dynamic with him being a first year pro guy. And then this
hmm
is the first real outdoor pro race for him as a pro. So it's totally changing things. I mean,
hmm
the Decker race was probably different. I know
hmm
he's raced at that or ridden at that facility before, but
Right.
the Triple Crown probably threw some of the guys off.
I think it threw a few guys off just because of the way it was. And I think for a lot of these riders that have been in the pro class for more than a few years even, they're not used to that sprint anymore. They've been doing the long form races for so long, and with the Triple Crown, you're doing three more sprint related races than you are of a marathon.
Right.
And so for some of these guys that have only been in the pro class for a few years, yeah, it's really easy to go, oh, it's just like when I was in pro am. Where some of these guys, I mean, look at Chad Ween and Joel Hetrick, they haven't been in the pro am class for over a decade.
Wow.
Chad for what, a couple decades now,
Maybe not a couple decades, but it's been a
but
long
getting
time.
close,
Right.
getting close. So, but I mean, obviously those are two guys that are very seasoned and I think can adapt very quickly compared to some of the other riders out there. So it was nice to finally be for the pro guys. I think a lot of them thought it was nice to be at this track because it was a an equalizer finally. You know, for anybody that thought it was the Triple Crown was unfair due to training and not training there, stuff like that. We're at a neutral ground. We're not at Daytona where everybody is just crossing their fingers and hoping they can leave there in one piece and make it to the next round. Um, and then now we're back to our longer format motos.
Well, we'll get into the, that portion, but
Hmm.
um yeah, it's great that we're all back.
Hmm.
Let's just jump right into pro sport.
Hmm.
Some of the guys that we had talked about last year didn't seem to fare that well, other than, Cade Deal. We talked about him last year, and
Hmm.
he seems to have jumped right out there and said, "Hey guys, I'm here. I want to do it." And the same with Noah Arnal.
Yeah.
Both of those guys. Noah was fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth place guy
Hmm.
last year. He's also getting a little older, probably
Right.
getting a little bigger, some strength, you
Right.
know. And I mean, there's a few names I remember. I remember from talking about front runners.
Mhm.
Uh, Damon Hubert,
Yeah, I mean Damien was well, so and that's another thing too is you've got Noah, you've got Damien, um, Cody Houghton even. They and Jack Van Veer kind of went back and forth a little bit last year as well, but those were all riders that were fresh to the pro sport class last year. Noah was his first year on actually Noah and Damien both were it was their first year on 450s period.
right?
And
They were
so
learning their way.
Noah, what's that?
They were learning their way.
Exactly. And obviously we saw Damien a couple times in pretty good spots last year. Noah, he had his ups and downs. If I remember correctly, he actually battled an injury for a little bit last year. Um, but I
I'm not
know what's that?
not not sure on that one.
I want to say maybe I don't remember. I think he did though. But yeah, I mean, Kale's been in this for a little while and obviously doing a 1-3 for first overall. He's finally getting the whole program back together. Cody Houghton, he's not necessarily on a completely new program, but he's doing his bike setup is quite a bit different than in years past. He's got a new engine package and things like that. Um, so I think they have some things that they just need to get used to. But Noah, he's pretty local to myself, so all the riding that I've been doing now, after letting my leg heal, I've been riding with him and he's been putting in the work over this off season between going down south and riding some indoor stuff up here in Ohio. He's been trying. He's been putting in the work to do better and throw some good results out this year. And obviously, sixth place in the first moto doesn't seem the greatest, but then coming back and winning the second moto, shows that you had got something figured out. And same thing with Damien going from a fifth to a second for that
Right.
third overall. It's
Yep.
pretty good.
Yeah. I mean, those guys really worked hard. Um, I don't think Kale was ready for them the second moto because they came out strong.
Right,
So,
right.
if we dive a little deeper into the field, we talked a lot last year about Heath Hanna.
Hmm.
He's back there in seventh. Gage
Hmm.
Beatty is in eighth. I expected him to be farther up the chain.
Hmm.
The real surprise to me is Brett Music.
Right,
Why
right.
not?
Right. I think with Brett, I didn't get a chance. I saw him a couple times in the pits this last weekend, but Brett's one of those guys that I usually will see and have conversations with throughout the weekend. Granted, usually it's in staging. Well, in the past, it was in staging with when he and I are racing 25 plus together. And then last couple years, it was in staging when we were waiting for pro sport motos. But it seems like every year his business is getting busier And so his time is focusing more and more on being, oh, excuse me, on being a father and a business owner than an ATV racer.
And that's exactly where it should be, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
You know, those guys are on fire, and
hmm
Brett's doing a great job from what I hear.
hmm
I've only talked to him a couple times. I'd love to get him on the show, just to get his insights to, what makes him drives him to do what he does. But he loves ATV racing just like the rest of us. And
Exactly. And he's been doing this for, I mean, and his father, CD Music, he's still racing this. He races the 50 plus class, or the 50, was it 50 plus masters class? And he hauls. I mean, in practices on Fridays, I would usually ride with CD quite a bit because A, he's got some speed for an older gentleman, and B, like he's just really fun and cool to ride with.
well, then that's a good reason to ride with him,
Right,
and
right. He and I had a lot of practice battles, I would say.
and that's freaking awesome. So
hmm
that class is, I think that the order is going to mix up there a little bit more. I
I think
think
so too. I think so too. Because yeah, I mean, you've got Heath that, he comes on strong at times. It seems like he battles weird little things here and there. And then obviously we'll get to it, I know, but come Sunday, he redeemed himself.
Well, we'll get to that
Right.
after we talk about the WMX gals. You
hmm
know, I just want to address this right off. Everybody well wishes to Kindsey. She got off hard. No, we don't know all the specifics other than the fact that she got off.
hmm
She was in second place, I believe, at the time.
Yeah.
Everybody's like, second place? What do you mean second place? Well, there is a young lady from the Netherlands named Emma Wray that has came out, and she's super fast. She's super strong, and she's going to give Kindsey some trouble this year. You know,
hmm hmm
it looks like Shelby. I always mess up her name. I'm sorry, Shelby. Um, Cobrando. Wow, she came out with a 2 seconds,
hmm
and all of Olivia Joiner. They're in the third spot,
hmm
and they're all on Hondas. Can you believe that? All
Well, I know Emma's was a CRF and an LTR chassis,
right,
and the
right.
other two are CRFs and TRX chassis.
Yeah, that class. I mean, there's throwouts, so I don't think that Kinsey's not going to be able to bring herself back to the top of the order.
Correct.
Depending on how she deals with, the psychological portion of going down.
hmm
I, I can't remember in the last 3 years, 4 years that she's went down.
No, I don't know. I honestly don't even know of a time that she's gone down. And I know obviously I talked to Jeremy Osborn. He hangs out with us at the track, and I believe he said it's been a long time since she's had a DNF or a bike failure in general.
Yeah. And dealing with that, I got to text back and forth with her a little bit,
hmm
because she's been on the show. I
hmm
reached out to make sure she was okay. She
hmm
sounded normal. She sounded, via text message. So, but it was same old Kinsey, lighthearted texts. She seemed to be just normal Kinsey, hey, it's okay. We'll bounce back. It's no
hmm
big deal.
hmm
Well, you'll see as soon as she puts her helmet on and goes ride the next
Right.
time. In a couple weeks, we'll know.
Right, right, exactly. And I know that she did get checked out, and they, it sounds like it was a concussion from that as well. But so hopefully, obviously, it's it was time to see something change. Kindsey is on this nasty winning streak and has won, what, last three championships. So it
Right.
was it was time to see something change, but now I just hope that Kindsey can gather everything from this and come back just as strong, if not stronger, now that there is some not this to say anything about the other women, but now that there is a little bit more competition in the class.
Well, let's just be honest, Kindsey freaking dominated the
Hmm.
last two seasons without even being contended.
Right.
And Emma Ray comes in there, Kindsey gets out in front, Emma passes her, and was it uh, shock? What was it? She hasn't been threatened in that
Right.
class. She's
Right.
been
Right.
riding with the boys, so riding with faster, more experienced people that would rub
Hmm.
her or push her, that's not the issue. But
Yeah.
here is the issue.
Right.
Emma Ray
Right.
went and put herself on the podium in the 450 A class.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly.
She got a second and a fifth. That's impressive.
It is very impressive. Very impressive. Someone that's just come over here and does that on their first race.
And she's worked with Joe Bird.
Hmm.
Regardless what you think of Joe, Joe's trained some pretty fast people and
Hmm. Hmm.
got a great work ethic. He's a two-time champ. He was runner up, I think, three times.
Hmm.
To be in the
Yeah. Something like
top
that.
two, that many times, you have to have some serious speed and some serious
Right.
punch. So,
Yeah. Yeah. No, exactly.
I mean, that class is going to change, and Kinsey get better. Emma Ray, keep doing what you're doing because it seems to be working.
Hmm.
You know, as we roll into the pro sport guys, you know, you told me that this wasn't going to happen, but it did. Joey Norris came down and raced in the pro am.
Yep. That was it was a from what I understand is it was a last minute decision. Actually, it was a decision that he made on Saturday after the pro races that he was going to stick around and race pro am on Sunday.
Okay.
Hmm.
And that's great. I mean, at track
Hmm.
time, at his level, track time, same with JJ, track time
Right.
is really what they need.
Yep.
Uh,
Yep. Yeah. I mean, that was the initial plan. Obviously, it didn't work out this round, but we'll see what happens in the future.
right, right.
Hmm.
Joey obviously would have been your candidate for going 1-1
Hmm.
and winning that, and he did. Uh, Damon, uh, he did well again, putting
Hmm.
himself on that two spot.
Yeah.
And then here it
Yeah.
is, like you said earlier when we were talking about Heath Hanna. Bam, here he
Yeah.
is.
Right.
So what's the difference between pro am and pro sport?
Right. And I mean, it could be a lot of things. I didn't really get the chance to talk to Heath. I really wanted to throughout the weekend. But it could have been something as small as, suspension adjustments to get comfortable on the track, small bike adjustments to get comfortable. It could be mental. It could be a lot of things. So it's just sitting down and talking with Heath and getting inside his head on what's going on, dude.
Yeah, I would really like to know what's going on with that kid. You know,
Right.
and what about I can't pronounce this young man's last name, Juan?
We just call him Wani. I don't know how to say his last name. Super cool
Okay,
kid, super
Juan.
cool family.
Wani seems to be holding his own. He's in a similar place. He
Mhm.
doesn't I don't think he's new to the classes,
He's
but
not. So he's a Argentina rider that comes over.
yeah,
Um, let's see. He's been coming over. Is it the last 3 years now? And I believe it was last year. I think it was last year. He got injured right away in the season.
okay.
Or no, he did not. No, no, no. I take that back. Maybe that was 2020. There was one year where he got injured. Last year he was around for most of it. But yeah, he's one of those riders that he obviously he goes home and he's very fast. I think he's one of the fastest over in Argentina.
Right.
Comes over here and throws down with the pro sport and pro am classes. And it seems like every year, he's learning. He's still a pretty young guy. Um, but he kind of goes up and down because there's some years that he does great, some years that or even some races, I should say, where he doesn't, he'll get top 10, but it may not be up in top five.
So could we be misjudging the caliber of all of these guys? If you look at the results
Hmm.
and the fact that they're so mixed up,
Hmm.
these guys are doing better. Second motos, or maybe
Hmm.
it's because it's so competitive. One moto, they're not as good because maybe they couldn't get through the pack because they didn't have that great of a start.
Well, and a little bit of insight on that Moto 1 for Pro-Am. Um, and I left because of this is as Pro-Am was getting down into staging, it started raining. And it really came down hard about when they hit the track.
Oh, so that mixed it up as well.
Yeah, that's probably a huge reason why you're seeing, Noah Arnal doing a 10-4 for sixth overall and Wani doing a 9-6, Tyler Marlin down in ninth doing a fifth and 10th. Mud changes a lot of things. Obviously not for Joey Norris and Heath Hanna.
Right. They both liked it.
Right.
Maybe
And you look at
Hannah
you
just
look
likes
at
the
Cale
mud.
Deal. What's that?
Maybe Hannah likes the mud.
It could be. It could be. But you got Cale Deal that did a 2-5. Well, second place in that first moto that it was raining. Cale's been doing some GNCC racing.
Okay, there you go.
So,
Probably didn't hurt him at all.
right, right.
That I can't wait to see the second round when we get to really judge these guys a little bit more and get into it.
Hmm.
It's going to be great to see how that class breaks down. Um,
Right.
we're going to roll into the pro class, and we'll talk a little bit about it because the results in the pro class here are a little jumbled as well.
Yeah.
With other than your first two guys, Brandon Hogue ran a 3.7 to get
Hmm.
third for the day. Um, that seven's really got to he's really got to fix that.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, for sure. And I mean, that second moto in the pro class that was something because you had people in the start of the race, people were all over the place and not anything like you would think. I mean, first of all, you got Wesley Wolf who did a 16-3. He got third in that second moto,
Right.
but in the
Back for
first
ninth.
moto, he had a shock issue that put him out of the race.
Okay.
So I
Uh,
mean, if Wesley Wolf didn't have that 16th in there in that first moto, and was in his standard, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh
you
area.
might have been on the podium. Your
Right.
Wi-Fi's not helping us here.
Yeah, something's up. Yeah, you've locked up a few times on my side here. Um,
Say
but
that
yeah,
again about Wes.
what's that?
Say that again about Wesley.
Oh, I was just saying, if he would have been in his normal spot, which is, on average fifth to eighth place in that first moto, he could be, somewhere even in that top five.
With pulling out a third in the second moto, he could have been 3-3 and
It's
you know
possible. It is possible.
changed up the order. Mason
Hmm.
Jackson, putting himself into fourth.
Hmm.
Mason's for real. I
Yeah.
mean, that fifth last year, obviously he's not going away. Uh,
Right.
he's there. What I really like seeing is Jeffrey Rastrelli. He's not up in the top three where I'd like to see him, but he's
Hmm.
still in the top five. He's still fighting. He's duking it out.
He was in the top three for a while in that second moto.
You think that the age has got something going on with him, or is it just still recovering from the injury last year?
I think age is playing a part in it. Just the Jeffrey might need to do a little bit more on the conditioning and stuff like that. And again, he's somebody that is transitioning into family man as well. So is that affecting his results? Can't really say for sure, but he's probably not putting a 100% into it because he is being a family man.
Right, right. I get it.
Hmm.
Um, Max, I don't know if Max liked the course or what was going on, but he didn't seem to have. He had a fifth and an eighth.
Hmm.
Um, maybe he's just not in his groove yet.
Max's qualifying times didn't show where he was last year either. So I mean, he didn't get, I think he was he one or two gate picks ahead of us in the first moto and did not get a very good start. Had to work his way up, and all he could get it was up to eighth. And then in the second, excuse me, in the second moto, he got a little bit better start, battled some people for quite a while, and obviously a fifth place is a lot better than what he's been getting so far this year. But yeah, I think the big thing is he just needs to, I think he needs to get his confidence back up and remember where he can be from previous years.
Right. So I want to talk about these. I want to talk about two other riders before we bring up the run rider that everybody wants us to talk about. Um, Zach Decker and Nick Janusa.
Mhm.
Zach has got the speed. Is he dealing with issues or ghosts or gremlins that we're not that I don't know anything about?
I think Zach, Zach, yeah, he starts out strong and is a threat at the beginning. And obviously, I think he's one rider that I don't think has really had a chance to transition into the pro longer race, mentality, because ever since he went pro, he's gotten hurt every year. We go to his home track, which yeah, it's his track, whatever, but we go to a shorter race and look where his results are. In Decker or at Daytona, he crashes, and here he has two really good starts, and he had I believe,
The
forget
ninth?
which moto it was. I believe he had a get off in one of the motos. He had a get off in the, is it the practice starts on the second qualifier? He went down, or no, I believe it was the parade lap. He went down and then comes
Do
back and pulls the whole shot.
you think it's something psychological going on with him?
I think so. I think so because we've seen it. He can ride. It could also be it's either something that's going on inside his head. He's battling things up there, or it's just the fact that he's not used to the longer motos like he should be at someone that's been in the pro class this long, but it's because he's never done a full season in the pro class.
Well, yeah, the last 2 years he's been out.
Exactly. Exactly. So he's starting strong, he's doing really good, and then is it that he's getting gassed and then he's making mistakes? Or is it the fact that his head's getting to him?
It could be all of it. It could be all
Right.
of it.
Right.
I think Zach is one of those riders that um, there are people that probably putting pressure on him to perform. I would have expected him to do better.
Mm-hmm.
Um, really, I think he will do better. He's just got to
Mm-hmm.
get through this whatever it is, this funk. Um,
Right.
but Nick Janusa,
Mm-hmm.
older, but I expect Nick to be fighting for that podium spot.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
He's
Yeah, and
got it. He's
he's
got the team.
somebody that before, especially before he got injured last year, he's somebody that was a contender for the podium. And this year we just haven't seen the results from him in the first three rounds.
Yeah, I'm not sure what's going on with Nick.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I mean, I don't think I'm the guy that should call him up and go, "Hey, dude, what's up?" You know,
Right.
what you doing? But I expected much better finishes. Maybe we'll see him later on in the season. But dude, we're 3 rounds in already, and
Right.
this season's going by quick. Boom, boom,
Right.
boom, and
Right.
we'll be at the final round. So
Yeah.
we'll have to see how that breaks down.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just talk about this man because you can never not. Chad Weenan, what is up with Mr. Weenan?
Chad had two terrible starts. Especially in the first moto, he was back, and I mean, he may have been outside the top 10 in the beginning of the first moto, but from where the moto started, I would have never thought he would have pulled that fourth out of his hat. I thought that Chad was going to end up in that first moto back in sixth or seventh. And then the second moto, yeah, he just
Think he gassed himself? Think he used up too much energy in Moto
I don't
One?
know if it's I think he used up quite a bit of energy, and I think that I don't know if he was quite anticipating that some of these other guys that are younger than him are gonna put up the fight the way they did. And also towards the end of the moto, Chad, I don't know, I only caught the end of it, but right in front of the mechanics area, there's a split lane, and it gets pretty eroded. And he took the inside line, and I think he had a little bit of a hard jolt, and his boot got stuck in his right heel guard net to the point where he had to turn around, come back to the mechanics area, and his mechanic, Thomas Brown, had to cut the net for him to get his foot out and continue racing.
So he lost some spots.
He lost some spots due to the fact that his foot was stuck.
Okay, so you could have seen him farther up the chain
Hmm.
if that didn't
Yeah.
happen. Okay.
Yeah. There's at least a couple spots that he lost from that.
Yeah, right.
Hmm.
So, I mean, there's not much to say about Bryce Ford other than 2-2 on the day. It's pretty solid finishes.
Hmm.
Uh, the one start that I saw, I felt he could have taken the whole shot if he was just more aggressive. Um,
Right.
you know, you got to take it to the guy that's taking it to everybody, and he didn't. Bryce, you got to step it up, buddy. If you want to beat
Right.
the man, you got to beat the man, and
Right.
you can't delay. You can't let him have any ground, and you did. And
Hmm.
so Bryce is the second fastest guy on the track. He wasn't even contested.
No.
I
No.
mean, they didn't even third place. Nobody that was in third ever contested
No.
Bryce.
No. Yeah. I mean, Bryce, obviously we all know that Joel has pulled out quite a bit above everyone else. And Bryce is starting to be that next guy that's pulling away from the pack.
Yeah, but he's not doing enough to
There's
catch.
not, yeah, it's not quite enough to close that gap between him and Joel, or not quite enough to stop that gap from starting in the first place.
So, do you think this was the most dominant performance from Joel Hetrick?
Um, I think it is due to the fact that Joel did not come out leading both motos. He didn't pull two hole shots and just walk away from it. He actually had to work his way into first and then pull away from everybody.
And from what I saw, it was just a pure ass kicking.
Oh, 100%, especially
It was,
towards the end.
yeah, it's just like
And he did the same thing last year too. I mean, I remember at Echeconnie last year, just watching him and going like, what the hell is up in his head that makes him think I need to do this? And, there's certain lines where his bike just skips across everything on pretty much, super choppy area that I got to see last year. He's just like skipping over it on his back wheels, and everyone else looks like they're about to crash.
I think it has to do with the hours that he trains, the confidence he has in his machine, and they must be doing some top secret shock work on that thing to get those shocks to develop and work that well for him,
Mhm.
you know.
I think he's bionic and he's plugging into the bike.
Maybe that too.
And then there's something.
I mean, you have riders in history that have pulled things and done things that other riders can't do, and he is in that zone. You got
Hmm.
to figure this kid's been racing these ATVs since he was, knee high to a grasshopper. He's
Right,
probably in
right,
diapers when he was riding them. So
right,
uh, he's a master of his craft, and these boys need to step it up. They're just not doing what he's doing.
right.
Uh, I don't think it's motor. I think it's chassis and ride
Hmm.
time.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, I mean, his engine isn't, it's not like he's running an engine that's making so much more power. And obviously, you and I know that all this power in the world isn't going to do much for you.
For a
But
guy his size, more power would probably be detrimental.
exactly, exactly. He's got it figured out where he's got just enough power and the power where he wants it, But yeah, I mean, he's got that chassis set up for him. He has become one with the bike.
Yep. And he's got a great team too, because they're
Mm-hmm.
doing
Mm-hmm.
what he needs to put him there.
Right. You know what? Actually, I'm going to take that back. The reason why Joel did so good is because I gave Gary rides to and from the gate.
There you go.
That is why, because Gary didn't have to walk to the gate and he wasn't tired. So that's why Joel did so well. I'm taking that.
All right. I'll give you that one.
I gave him golf cart rides to and from. I think I even gave him a little snack on one of them.
Wow. I don't think JJ's going to be too happy with that.
Eh, maybe he shouldn't leave me.
Okay. All right. I'll call JJ up and say, hey man, maybe you should take better care of your mechanic.
Right, right. I got a golf cart because he never remembers to pick me up.
Man, that's rough. Um,
Right. And that was a hell of a
so,
walk this last weekend, too.
you know what? I'll tell you, when I was wrenching for Eichner, I never rode on the back of the bike.
Yeah. I've
Never.
I've done it while Deckers I would do it, but yeah.
I walked every time because
Yeah.
I come from that era when, it just wasn't acceptable to do that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We didn't have pit bikes and all this stuff.
Right.
I mean, there were people that did, but we just never did,
Right. Right.
wasn't.
Yeah. No, and I got enough steps in on Friday that my dogs were barking.
Well, that's good. You're young, man. Why do you
Not
think
that young anymore.
bro, you're still a kid.
I'll be 34 in a couple weeks.
I'm just a little upset though that your beard's not, I mean, your beard's just not perfect like it was the last couple times.
I groomed, I trimmed it. So what happens is, I've got an almost 9 month old that I know it's time to trim my beard when she can get a good grip on it and just, oh,
That's
feels
okay.
great.
I'm sure it does, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
I didn't have a beard until, well, it's kind of thin, but I didn't really have a beard until I was freaking in my 50s. Yeah.
Yeah. Luckily I got it before that because it hides a lot.
Well, I had a goatee, but I never went to the beard thing,
Yeah. Yeah. Huh.
we're supposed to be talking about ATVs, not facial hair. Brother, I want to thank you so much.
Hmm.
Let's just be honest, man. The pro class, they need to step it up. Joel Hetrick's
Yeah.
kicking butt.
Yeah.
I'm really excited to see what goes on in the pro sport and pro am classes.
Yeah.
Um, Kindsey Osborn, get well, because Emma Ray's for real, and I think that you guys are going to have one hell of a season.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. It's going to be very interesting and it's going to be, there's no nice way to put this. It's going to be nice to actually have something to talk about in the WMX class this year.
Well, we always did have something to talk about. It was just we
Mhm.
talked about Kinsey.
It was, yeah, well, yeah, it'd be nice to say something other than, oh yeah, Kindsey just walked away from it. She got another win easily. She's undefeated. She's, on the,
I think the reason Emma Ray is so fast is that bumper.
I think she's, I
Well,
think
you
she's,
know what I'm talking about, do you?
no.
You need to go take a look at her bike.
Oh, really? She have a Duncan bumper, doesn't she?
Yes.
She and Marshall.
There you go.
There you go. There you
Marshall's
go.
in there too. So pretty proud of
Um,
her.
but yeah, I think it doesn't help that she came over here determined. And I know I've seen little bits and pieces of some trash talking that was done online, and obviously if you're gonna throw that out there, you have to back it up.
Right. And I don't know what that story is, other than I know that she had came over in the past and things didn't go her way.
Okay.
But now this young lady is for real.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and every time you get a badass like a Kinsey,
Mm-hmm.
there's another badass standing there behind her in the shadows.
Right.
And
Right.
I just think somebody, smacked her and said, hey, here I am.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
somebody's going
So
to do it
now
to
it's,
Joel eventually.
I mean, this person needs to wake up soon because we need something in that class. Because I mean, yeah, I love Joel. He's a great guy, but something needs to happen.
Well, you know what? Let him run out his course. You know,
Mm-hmm.
we've let all the other pros and all the other guys that dominated. Look at WX. Look at cross country, dude.
Mm-hmm.
They haven't had a non-lineage champion. What I mean by that is if you go back to the early days, the guys would win two or three, and then
Mm-hmm.
somebody else would win one, and then maybe they'd win another one, and then it was somebody else, and then you get to Barry Hawk who won seven, Bill
Mm-hmm.
Balance won nine, Chris Borich
Mm-hmm.
won six or seven, whatever it is, and then
Yeah.
Walker Fowler. Now you got Bryson Neal, and he's
Right.
won three. Um, that that hurts the sport, but it's
Mm-hmm.
great for the sport all at the same time because you have these legendary style champions.
Right. Right. I'm
Chad
just glad that unlike
too.
the dirt bikes, we don't have like these spoiled turds coming in here that are just talking so much shit, and then all of our guys are humble enough that when they're on these winning streaks, well, it's still the same person.
Well, if I was Deegan's sponsor, I'd already fired him.
Oh, that too. And not to get off topic here, but anyone else that's done that stuff, that's what ended their careers.
Yep. And you just can't have that. It's unprofessional. It's
Mhm.
rude. It's the kid's talented beyond talent.
But he's
Yes,
an
I
idiot.
cannot take that. But dude, be humble and quit being an asshole.
Right,
Nobody
right.
likes
Exactly.
I mean, yeah, and you got a bunch of keyboard warriors on the internet that are like cheering him on. Well, dude, in the real world, that's not what you want to teach your child. You want to teach your child to be an arrogant prick?
Yeah, exactly.
No, you don't. They want to have respect. And this is just funny you brought it up. I
Hmm.
saw an interview with him going, well, I don't really have any friends in the 250 class, and maybe some guys that are back markers. Well, the reason you don't have friends, dude, is because you're a dick.
Yeah, you probably don't have any real friends, period.
Right. Because you're a dick, you
Right.
know? Um, I don't know what it's like because his sister races NASCAR, doesn't
Hmm.
seem, or NAS trucks, doesn't seem to be so arrogant.
Right.
Maybe in that world, they don't take it.
Well, and I don't know, you know, the big thing with him is you could tell if you watch any of the old stuff, he was raised on a pedestal. I don't know if his sister was.
There's some arrogance there, but I don't think it's the same kind. I mean, if
Hmm.
she ever dominated, look out. I think you'd see it.
Yeah,
But
yeah, that's possible.
you also got to know the dad was just like that and still
Yeah,
is,
exactly.
you know,
Exactly.
and I'm not a huge fan, not a not fan, just
Hmm.
could have lived with it, could live without it.
Right,
Didn't
right.
matter to me, but professionalism is everything. And you do got to give that to Joel Hetrick. He's a very, very professional guy.
That he is. That he is.
Was Chad Weenan. I mean, I don't know. I can't name not one of the pros that we talked about that's not professional.
No, no.
I mean, I've seen some things that Joel did that were marginally, an issue. Like when him and Chad crashed,
Yeah.
that he was marginally out of line, but yeah,
Uh-huh.
he's an emotional guy, and
Exactly.
he didn't do anything wrong. He didn't hit anybody. He freaking, cussed a little bit and yelled and screamed, and okay, I get it. You know,
Hmm.
calmed down, got on the internet, told everybody what was going on,
Right.
and I think, if I'm not mistaken, he apologized for losing his cool.
I think he did. Yeah. Yeah. Eating his pizza.
Yeah, dude, that's freaking great.
Yeah.
Icing his elbow, eating pizza, and telling everybody.
Exactly. Exactly.
Uh, so we have to look at those kind of things too,
Hmm.
and as a previous sponsor or previous guy on the track, we were raised that if let's say you had a failure on your bike, like Wesley Wolf. Remember that a couple years ago, Wesley's bike broke and he pushed it back.
Hmm.
Most of those guys leave them.
Right.
You leave my bike on the track, you might as well just freaking go to somebody else's camper or
Right.
because you're done. You're not
Right,
right.
right. Well, and that's the thing with Wesley too. You know, I spoke to him in my press conference, pre-race press conference, and I asked them, and I knew what Wesley's answer would be, which is why I asked him. But I asked about their training routines off the track. Wesley's training routine was swinging a hammer that week.
Yep.
And he's the closest thing to like a blue collar pro rider that we have.
Well, Max still has to work too in this plumbing job.
Max still has to work too. Yes, yes. Um, but yeah, I mean, Max still finds the time to do proper athlete training, where Wesley doesn't.
Right. Could you imagine you take Wesley Wolf and put him on a program where all he had to do is ride?
He had he had some pretty good programs back in the day. I just think he kind of took them for granted.
I
And
yeah,
now he kind of has he doesn't have a pot. Well, I don't want to say he doesn't have a pot to piss in, but he doesn't really have anything left to lose. You know what I mean? So now he's become this guy, and and I straight up told him what I told you on our pre-race at Deckers, that he's our Jason Anderson, and he laughed. I said, "Do you disagree?" He goes, "No." All right, at least you know it.
well, get your ass on the podium, boy, where you belong.
Exactly, exactly.
You quit screwing around. So
Yeah,
we'll see how it all goes, brother. I appreciate you staying up late and doing this
yeah.
post race report with me. And we're going to Sugar Tree.
Lake Sugar Tree in Virginia.